Hello and welcome to the Fen Den. I'm your host, Sean Allen Fenn, and my goal is to win your hearts and to change your minds. Hey, welcome to the Fen Den. I'm your host, Sean Allen Fenn, and you've been listening to the little boy yodeling in Walmart. He's so good. Oh, I love it. Speaking of music, I am a huge fan of Spotify, and Spotify just went public recently, just this week, and they're valued at, when they first went public, their stock soared, valuing it at almost $30 billion, 29.5 to 26.54 billion. Okay, but Spotify has made no profit ever. Okay, isn't that funny? Yeah, they have a net loss of 1.5 billion. So, how does that happen? Spotify is such a great service, but why don't they make any profit? What's the value of music nowadays? This is kind of close to my heart because I'm also a musician, and I was just looking at the royalties that I made from a recording that I put out, and by the way, it's called "The Gutters of Heaven." And it's just fractions of pennies. So music is free. And famously, the tiff between Taylor Swift and Spotify was memorable because she's now on Spotify, but she pulled her music and refused to release it because she insisted that music should be free. Remember that? Well, music itself is free. So it's how you monetize it that matters, but the whole industry is totally changed to the point where I don't know if you could say it really isn't much of a music industry anymore. But in the case of Spotify, I love Spotify actually. But they pay just like fractions of pennies to artists, and they have to find other streams of revenue. They're kind of like Netflix was. I mean, Netflix, I think, still is not profitable, but everyone loves it. So how long can companies go like that? I guess for a while they can run with no profit if they have enough backing, because the service is so in demand. And that raises the question in our modern age of cryptocurrency. Do we have to kind of appreciate other forms of creating value? Because everyone loves music, and clearly music is not a profitable thing. Neither is, I mean, I love this conversation because the same thing can be said for any of the arts in general. From visual art, even though that's a multi-billion-dollar industry and that is profitable, but not for everyone. It's a weird, wacky world that we live in. But I wanted to talk about Spotify because it raises some really interesting questions that I'm curious about, and you probably are too, and that's why you're listening to The Fenden with your host, Sean Allen Fenn. So, Spotify needs to find additional revenue streams, and I wanted to let's brainstorm and think of ways that they can do it, because they are relying on subscriptions, and the ad revenue only accounts for 10%, and they pay out so much to the labels. The more they make, their business model is that as they make money, the labels make money. Which means essentially the inmates have taken over the asylum because record labels, once they get paid out, as Spotify pays the labels, then the labels pay out the artists just fractions and fractions of pennies. So we're kind of still, I mean, the whole music industry kind of flipped on its head, but at the same time, it hasn't really changed because the artists who make the music are still not the winners if you count it by who makes the most money. I mean, just overall. Unless you're someone like Taylor Swift, who this isn't her only, it's not the only show in town for her. She has a strong enough fan base, and she doesn't need Spotify to sustain her career. But at the same rate, Spotify is now the dominant way that we listen to music. So you could kind of say that they won the game so far. And I think back to when this whole MP3 thing happened with Napster in the early thousands, and that, remember when Metallica threw a fit about Napster, and they insisted that artists should get paid for their music, and I do believe that they should, but thinking the world should be a certain way, and the way it is in actuality is there's two different things. And it depends on what side you're on. if you're on Spotify, if you work for Spotify, you're good. They just went public. They're not going to go away anytime soon. But they still don't make any profit. And it's kind of weird. But the value they offer is through the service and the users that use their service. I mean, if they disappeared tomorrow, it wouldn't be the end of the world. We would still listen to music. But, I mean, the music industry is kind of dispersed. And at the end of the day, it's just a matter of the artist, him or herself, the actual musician, and how well that they can get attention on their music. And it's possible to, for an artist to have a sustainable career if they don't. What I'm saying is, you don't really need a record label, and you don't need Spotify, and there's still going to be music. And at the end of the day, the artist is an entrepreneur, and the visual artist and a musical artist, as well as a dancer. I don't know if you agree, but they are the ultimate entrepreneur. I love it because it is just pure creativity. How well can the artist develop and execute their art and engage with people? And then how do you monetize it so you can keep it going? And that is the question. You're listening to The Fen Den with your host, Sean Allen Fenn, where my goal is to win your hearts and change your mind. And we're talking about Spotify. They went public without having to raise money. They did this thing called direct listing, where they were able to forego investment, so they didn't have to raise any money for themselves. The company didn't have to raise money for itself, and they're not profitable, but they provide so much value as a service to the point where you have to wonder if, of course, you need money, you need cash flow, but it's a way to not have to really play by the rules when you offer a service like this. So what makes it so great? Spotify wasn't the first to do music streaming. Remember Pandora? I think Pandora still exists. I've never used it. I haven't used it in years. So what makes Spotify more successful than Pandora? And for that matter, if you remember, the iPod was not the first MP3 player. There was an MP3 player before the iPod. So what makes something better than another thing? And how novel is it? Or is it really that important to be the new thing? Because the new thing doesn't always last. So isn't it better to be the next thing that let someone else do all the hard work and then work out the bugs and then bring out your thing that's an improvement on the other guy's thing and see who wins? For example, Facebook wasn't the first social network. Before that was MySpace, and MySpace was really big. They didn't have the same level of programming, though. So Facebook won because they had better programmers. There were some other things that made it win, and I guess you can't escape looking at who's running the ship, who the CEO is, who's the captain. I mean, clearly, Zuckerberg is a more shrewd businessman than Tom from MySpace. I watched interviews with Tom from MySpace, and he looks like a cool dude, but he's so chill. Ty Lopez interviewed him. Go look it up. I think you can probably find it on YouTube. He's a chill dude, but he's laughing all the way to the bank. I mean, the guy is a genius. When you listen to his interview, it's probably not too dissimilar from other famous entrepreneurs who, most really great entrepreneurs didn't really do the traditional school thing. I mean, I think maybe Zuckerberg did, but Steve Jobs didn't. Steve Jobs dropped out of college. Tom from MySpace, I don't even think he went to high school. He just self-learned. Of course, that's the exception, not the rule. I'm not saying that everyone should drop out of school, but it would save you some debt. It would save you some student loan debt. I mean, okay, I'm going to diverge a little bit, as I often do here on the Fendon. But, man, the real problem, let me tell you about the real problem with this country, the system, is student loan debt is going to crush us. It is the biggest scam in the whole world. I mean, speaking of overvaluation, the most overvalued thing right now that very few people are acknowledging, the most overvalued thing that exists is college. I mean, there's no way that the level of student debt that people are incurring, there's no way that won't crush us. I mean, it's obscene. Anyway, but no, back to more interesting stuff, like Taylor Swift versus Spotify. So Taylor Swift famously pulled all her music from Spotify, and the CEO, Daniel Ek, had to hard sell it to Swift to get her back. He had to go to Nashville several times, and he won her business. He had to sell it to her, and he totally had to hard sell it to her because she doesn't need Spotify to make a living because she has a strong enough fan base. So Spotify needs her, and he knew that. So she held the power. And he did it. He was able to get her on. I don't know what kind of deal they cut. Probably. It goes to show a couple of things. Number one, the artist really does have the power when he or she believes that he does. And of course, it has to be legitimate, but she does. She had that leverage. So she has star power, which means it's possible for the artist to win the game. And, she's an exception to the rule. Because for most artists, they're not making that much money off streaming. Definitely. I mean, you have to have a lot of music out before you start to make any profit on it. Because artists are going to only make fractions of pennies on streaming. So Spotify needs these additional forms of revenue. And what they might want to do is look at what the artists are doing to make money and copy that. I mean, if you think about it, how does a musical artist, make money? They don't have to have a record label anymore. They do shows and they get paid for their shows and they build their fan base. And I mean, I'm not a huge fan of The Weeknd, but he gave out his music for free. He did a freemium model, and he released a bunch of his music for free just to get attention before he was able to monetize. But the thing is, like, you have to get attention, and then you either make merchandise. I mean, as a rock musician, I'm pretty sure rock is dead. People don't listen to rock anymore. But back in my day, when I had a rock band, everyone in who's ever been in a band knows you gotta make t-shirts. That's what you do. You go out and you go on tour and you sell t-shirts and sell CDs. You need physical things because that's the easiest way for people to consume things and trade you money for it. And when it starts to all be digital, we can't hold it, so our brains are like, don't fully process it the same way. That's my theory. And it's weird, but really, you can see how everything is becoming digital. And I wonder how the next generations are going to do business, because at one point, something's going to flip and just everything's going to be digital. And so you won't need cash. So then what do? You trade value in other ways. It's kind of cool. And a while back, every time that Burning Man comes around, I like to I interject some of my opinions, and it pisses some people off because burning this, I make fun of burners, but I don't mean anything by it. And I mean, I actually kind of respect that they're looking for new ways of existing. Like, for example, instead they look at a different, as an alternative to capitalism, they have this basically a barter system. And I know you guys might argue with me that it's not a barter system, but the reason why I think it is because first of all, it's absurd that you have to pay so much money to get in a place where you can't use money. But once you pay all this money to get in, you can't use money, like we do with capitalism. You have to trade things. You basically, you trade your value, you barter things. Like, you'll do something for someone, and I haven't been to Burning Man, so I'm totally admitting that I haven't been there. So, okay, take it with a grain of salt. But, I mean, the reason I haven't is I just, so far, haven't wanted to, because of how it appears on the outside, to where I think it's ridiculous to pay so much money to get into a place where you are not allowed to use money. It's kind of hypocritical. But I like that they're looking for novel ways of living, different ways of doing things. And that part is cool, that they're interested in like creating a new way, a different way, an alternative that's not capitalism, and it's not communism, and it's not socialism. It's basically like, it's kind of, okay, the reason I bring it up is it's kind of like what Spotify does. So in this respect, like I have to hand it to them. I have to hand it to people who do stuff like this and try things like this. And here's the correlation that I'm making, is that Spotify doesn't make any money, but they're giving. Okay, they call it a giving economy. And that's cool. I mean, I'm not knocking it. It's actually cool to give. And in the grand scheme of things, that's actually, okay, hear me out. Giving is the thing. Giving is the reason. The giving is how, like, the pure essence. I'm gonna see if I can make this into a soundbite and say it so succinctly, because I really think it's the heart of what I'm trying to say. Giving is the freaking fuel, is the reason that life exists. I mean, it really is. I mean, it's better to give than to receive, as they say, because like giving is giving has to come first before you receive. You can't receive before you give. You have to give first, right? Because what can you receive if there's no giving? So somebody has to do the giving. And I like that. Somebody has to do the giving. And so Spotify is giving this service, and it's showing up as like something that people value, even though it's not profitable in terms of making revenue. And you have to appreciate that, they say money isn't everything. And that's true. It's not everything. But it's everything else. But let's talk about the else for a minute. The else, that is the giving of like not really expecting to receive. I don't know if that's what they had in mind for how Daniel Ek kind of sees the world. I don't know if that's his philosophy or not, but I'd be curious to find out, like, because they're giving such a good service that is adding so much value to the world, and we would miss it if Spotify disappeared tomorrow. I would miss Spotify. Sure, the world would move on, things would keep going, but the thing is, like, music will never go away, art will never go away. There are things that are higher on this higher plane. I mean, I know it sounds a little woo-woo, but seriously though, things that you can't monetize. Sure, you have to measure it somehow, but I mean, music won't go away because it's part of who we are as humans. We make music, we make art, it's a sign of life, and it's not going away. So the key is to figure out how to make it work. So if you're going to provide a service that is music, of course you have to monetize it to hire people. Because what did Daniel Ek do to hire people at Spotify? Did he say, I want to hire you, but we're going to just pay you in music? Okay, how am I supposed to do that? You can't pay rent with music, but there's always a workaround. They find a way to get funding. So they get this financial backing to provide this streaming service, and they give equity to the record companies. It looks like it's like a way for the record companies to continue to exist because they basically have equity in this streaming service, and they're making money before Spotify makes a profit, and well before the artist can make any money from it. So what I'm saying is you can't ignore the cash flow. It can't be ignored. Okay? I know you thought I was going like, oh, money's not important, but it certainly is. And if you're like me, we don't have the luxury of not having to raise money. Like Spotify doesn't have to raise money, and they can just do their thing, which is cool because I love it. It's a great service. But you and I don't have that luxury. We have to freaking pay our own way. And that's the reality of it. And let me be real with you. Right now is a crazy time, a crazy transition for me. And I'm going to talk about this because I want anyone who is still listening to me to have a conversation, because we are always becoming. And I want to be always becoming my ideal self. Do you? Always becoming my ideal self is not comfortable. It really is not. And when you're face to face with your flaws and the things that you're like, okay, I can see, okay, now I can see what I did wrong all this time. Now I have to make steps to correct it. Okay, because the reason why money is important is because it's a measurement. I mean, it's clearly like not the be all and end all. I never want anyone to think that I think that it is, because it's definitely not. It's sort of a point system, though. I mean, when you play video games, the best video games earn points, don't they? I actually don't play video games, but it looks like you have to win points to win. And if you're playing a game like on the field, you have to win points to win. And that's what money is. You're winning points to win. And it's win or lose, dude. And I mean, I hate to be so black and white about it, but I have to be real, man. I am determined to win. And what am I winning? I'm winning the becoming of my ideal self, my full potential, recognizing where the things are that I need to improve on, not dwelling on them, but paying close attention to my friends who have the qualities that I lack, and I can listen to them. And you know what? Frankly, like there's a chance that I may have kind of been a little bit too egotistical. I can be that way. I admit it, and it's not intentional. It's the learning and the growing as a human being. I mean, we start off as children, learning how to crawl, before we can learn how to walk. And some kids learn how to walk right away. They go straight to running, they go straight to riding a bicycle. Well, if you ask my mom, according to her, I was a lazy kid. I was a lazy baby. I didn't want to get up and learn how to walk. And so it seems like there's something in my personality that has a tendency to not want to freaking get up and move. And what is it about you? There's probably something that you kind of, a trait that you have. We all have these personalities and these tendencies. And some are good, some are bad. Like some people excel easily, but most of the time it takes some hard work, and I really have to get real, man. And so, I want to hear from you. Let me ask you, like, how I can provide more value to you, because I honestly do need to know if anything that I'm saying is resonating with you. And if it is, send me a message or something. I'm easy to find. Okay. And I'm going to wrap up this episode of the Fen Den with just a couple things. Taking a lesson from Spotify and the story of Spotify. The things that I take away are that you can provide the value that you're passionate about. And if you do that well, if you can really tap into that, like fill a need, because they weren't the first streaming service. There was Pandora and there was, a ton of other things before them. They did something, they did it in a way, whatever they did it in a way that works. Regardless of whether they are making profit right now, they did something, and they're doing something that is working for them. And so I really want you to tap into what is really, number one, what you're passionate about, and you probably would want to make money at it so you can keep doing it. And on the other hand, if it's something that can't be monetized, then be okay with that. And clearly we all got to do what we got to do to stay in the game and to win the game. It could be something different for you, but for me, it is to make a meaningful contribution. And also, on a professional level, the past few months, I really had to kind of hone in on how to bring it all together. And I did that with the help of people, surrounding myself with people who are doing something well and getting feedback from them. And of course, not every piece of feedback that you get from someone, you don't have to use everyone's advice. But when enough people say the same things over and over again, it's true. And when you have someone that knows you well enough to help you to improve yourself as a person, and you can help that person improve in times of need, that is what I think, that's what life is all about. And that's what I have to end this episode of the Fen Den. That's what this is about. It's about becoming the ideal you. Whatever that is. It's one thing for me, but it might be something else for you. You might want to be the next great artist or musician or ballerina or entrepreneur. I mean, do it. Let me just remind you, though, to keep going when the going gets tough, because it will get tough. Trust me, it will get freaking tough, and you're gonna want to give up, and you're gonna want to question you're gonna want to doubt yourself. But don't doubt yourself. I'm not here to second guess myself, and I'm not gonna ever tell someone that they did something wrong, because what do I know, dude? Who am I? So, you can do it. Alright, that's all for now. Thanks for listening, you guys.